Thank you everyone for joining us today for our webinar, Consolidating Data Processes and Building Customer Reporting at Jobvite. My name is Daniel Mintz. I'm the Chief Data Advocate here at Looker in Google Cloud. I'll be your host and moderator for today's presentation. With me today, I'm really excited to have Zach Linder, the VP of Analytics and Machine Learning at Jobvite. On this webinar, Zach is going to share his experience and tips for consolidating data processes across multiple companies, as well as building out a robust platform for customers and clients to view, analyze, and then act on their own talent acquisition data within the Jobvite platform. We're just about to get started, but before we do, I just want to go over a quick few housekeeping items. First off, we'll leave plenty of time for questions and answers at the end of our presentation, but you don't need to wait till the end to ask a question. If you have a question at any point, you can type it in to the Q&A box and click send, and we'll see that at the end and do our best to answer all of those questions. You should also know that the presentation is being recorded, so we'll be sending out that recording after it's over. For those who aren't familiar with the system, the windows you see on your screen, they're all customizable, so you can minimize them, maximize them, move them around, however you see fit. If you accidentally minimize or close a window for any reason, don't worry. Just click the toolbar menu on the bottom of the screen and you'll bring it back up. And with that, let's get started. So before we go over to Zach, I just wanted to give a sort of rundown on what Looker is, what what it's doing, and then Zach is going to talk about what that looks like in real life. So folks should know, Looker is an analytics platform, and our goal is to empower people through the smarter use of data. We don't like to see data locked away in silos where nobody can access it. We want to put it in people's hands where they can actually, be empowered, get answers to the questions that they have from that data. But we want to do that in a way where people are getting sort of trustworthy answers, where they feel empowered, not where they're just getting raw data and having to figure out how to interpret that themselves. So what we see too often, unfortunately, is that companies today are just drowning in data. They have so much data because all the systems that they're using are creating data, but they're not getting very much value from that data. And that is just a complaint that we hear over and over and over. And that stems from a number of different things. One reason for that is that disparate data means that people can't really trust the data. It just lives in too many different places. And so it's hard to know, is this the right data? Am I looking at the right data? Is this data current? Is it accurate? Another reason is that data, because it's locked away in silos, it's inaccessible. Nobody has a sort of complete view of the business and all of its data. And so that can make it very, very hard to understand, am I actually seeing the whole picture, or am I just seeing a slice that maybe gives me the wrong view of what's happening? And then the third thing is that data teams, unfortunately, end up becoming a bottleneck, right? They have to lock down access to the data in order to make sure that people aren't misinterpreting it. But as a result, they can't stay agile, and the teams that need the access to the data can't stay agile. And so what happens is that you just get this pile of requests for the data team. Hey, can I get this data? Hey, can I get that data? I need access to this data. And the data team hates it because they don't want to spend all of their time responding to these requests. The business users who need access hate it because they don't want to wait in line. So it's really not fun for anybody. And so what we're seeking to do is to really go beyond what is traditionally thought of as business intelligence. And so that means creating governance to make sure that people can only access the data that they're supposed to, and that when they access it, it's not just raw data, but it's meaningful business metrics that they know how to interpret, and that those metrics are correct. And then using those metrics, not just to feed dashboards, but to feed all the mission critical workflows that the company depends on. It also means making data accessible to people, not just in a tool that they have to come and learn this new tool and get acquainted with it, but rather pushing data out to people wherever they are, whatever tools they're already using, pushing data into those tools so that it comes and finds them when it's important. And what that allows is it allows the data team, rather than to constantly be responding to that backlog of requests, to instead start thinking about higher value things like what Zach is going to talk about, building data products, right? Actually, getting value out of your data, not just for your internal consumers, but also for your customers, your partners who want to understand what's happening with your data, with the data that you control, that maybe they're creating but is getting stored in your systems. And, we talk to more and more people today who say, we have this trove of data. It seems really valuable. I'm sure that there are people outside of my business who would like access to this data, whether partners, suppliers, customers. And, they say, we would like to give them access to data. And, it doesn't seem that hard, right? We've got the data, it's in a database. And so we'll just, build some user interface, a couple of dashboards, and we're good to go, right? The problem, of course, is that when you start to dig beneath the waves a little bit, sorry for the mixed metaphor there, but when you look beneath the waves a little bit, what you see is that you're only seeing the tip of the iceberg, and there's a lot more that goes into building a scalable, maintainable solution to give other people access to your data. So having a flexible architecture that can grow and scale with you, being able to stay performant as you add more and more users, dealing with authentication and making sure that people are only seeing the right data. I really can't imagine something worse than if you're giving access to data to, let's say, your suppliers, and you show supplier A's data to supplier B and supplier B's data to supplier A. That is a big, big no-no. So authentication, security, permissions, all of that stuff is incredibly important. And it's not something that people necessarily think about when they're first contemplating, building one of these embedded analytic solutions that's embedded in their portal or in their application. So there's just a lot that goes into building one of these solutions that people don't initially think about. And that's really what Looker's trying to solve. So when we work with our customers to create embedded analytic solutions that are going to, give access to data to other people outside their company, what we're thinking about is, one, how do we, give them a platform that they can build really efficiently on? Second of all, how do we give them a tool that's going to allow them to start small and then grow very rapidly, right? Because you want to get that prototype out the door quickly to start getting feedback. This is what, agile methodology is all about, but then be able to scale up. And then finally, how do we make sure that what we're delivering is really high quality? And so, in terms of building efficiently, there's a lot of stuff that's sort of core to the way that Looker does things that makes this possible. One is that, all of the governance that's baked into Looker, all the things that make sure that, the data is right, that transforms that raw data from raw data into meaningful business metrics, it's all Git version controlled. So that makes collaboration at scale really easy, means that you can ship code, you can stage it before you ship it and make sure that it's right. You can create, releases, all the things that software developers do all the time. And so those things are just baked into the way that Looker works. Another thing that is really core to the way that we do things is this idea of letting the right tool do the right job. And so, Looker, unlike a lot of other tools, is not actually ingesting your data into some proprietary in-memory engine that you have to pay more and more for as your data scales. We're actually pushing all of the work down to your database or your data warehouse. And because data warehouses and databases have become so powerful, so cheap, so flexible, that is exactly where you want the data crunching to happen. So Looker is that intermediary layer that allows you to leverage all of the power of the tools underneath it. And that minimizes your scaling costs because it means that you're not having to scale up Looker, linearly as your number of users scale. And finally, in terms of, quality, Looker is all about delivering, not just dashboards, but really whatever kind of experience that your end users need. And so, if you're building a whole custom application on top of Looker using our full set of RESTful APIs, you can build exactly the experience that you want. And Looker's modularity and the ability to swap components in and out means that you can start using all off-the-shelf components that Looker gives you, and then start to build them out and customize them over time as you get more sophisticated and more sure that you're building a solution that provides value to your customers. So all of this combines to offer what I think is a really unique tool for people who are trying to give access to data to other people, not just to their internal, colleagues, but also to partners, suppliers, customers. And, often enough, this doesn't just provide additional value and maybe some differentiation from other products in your space. It also can provide whole new revenue streams. Maybe, access to raw data becomes a premium offering. So In terms of how we do this, just on a technical level, and then I'm really excited to bring in Zach to talk about what this looks like in practice. As I said, one of the big things is that Looker is actually leveraging the database underneath, right? And so that allows us to be fast on any size data. If you want Looker to query petabytes of data and it's on a data warehouse like Snowflake or Google BigQuery that can handle that, Looker can handle petabytes of data, no problem. And it can do that very performantly. The second thing is, what we call our modeling layer or governance layer or semantic model. It's called LookML internally. And what that is it's a way to take all the knowledge that your analysts have about what your data means and get that knowledge out of their heads and into software where everybody can access it and where everyone's accessing the same version of the truth. So the key business metrics that you're using to drive your business internally, you can use those same definitions and turn that around and give it to your customers in your portal. The third thing is, as I said, Looker pulls in a lot of these core concepts from software development that we know are incredibly important, right? Looker is built for modern developers. So, that whole idea of software development lifecycle of doing development and then pushing to staging and then finally pushing to production when you're ready, that's core to the way Looker does things. Version control so that you can see what changed, who changed it, why they changed it. All of that is core to the way that Looker does things. So these ideas that unfortunately have been a little slow to penetrate data analytics have really been pulled along by Looker to really bring in these great advancements that have made software development possible and made it possible to build such powerful software systems. And then the final thing is that because Looker, is a cloud product and it, there's only one version of Looker, it's not living on your desktop, there's no desktop version to download, that means that Looker can connect to all the other systems that you're already using. And so whether that means, building something right on top of Looker or pushing data from Looker out to other systems, pushing alerts to people's phones, or, pushing, custom cohorts into tools like Salesforce or Marketo, Looker makes that really easy because it already lives in the cloud. And so using its APIs and other tools' APIs to talk to each other is really, really simple. So enough of the sort of high-level stuff about Looker. I'm excited. I hope you're excited to hear what this looks like on the ground. So I'm going to hand it over to Zach, who's going to talk about what this looks like at Jobvite.
Thanks, Daniel. It really is an honor to be here. We're really excited. We're about a year into our Looker journey, and we've been so thrilled and excited to be able to use a tool that really holds up to all the things that Daniel just mentioned. So I get excited about seeing all those things because I know that we've implemented lots of those, but I'm still excited to see where else we're going to go with Looker and make sure that that we're continuing to push the envelope and build out and continue to do great things. So Jobvite, a little bit about us. We are a full service talent acquisition suite. So we are a SaaS company that builds solutions for TA and HR professionals. And we have things like applicant tracking services, candidate CRM solutions, internal mobility, which is helping internal candidates find positions with the company that you're already in, intelligent messaging, and other solutions like onboarding, performance management, similar types of solutions. So where we started our journey with Looker is because last February, we, as Jobvite, we purchased 3 other companies. So all at once, there's a roll-up strategy, right? And so every individual company already has a lot of data challenges, ourselves included, and we're constantly trying to solve for those. And the challenge gets to be even more complicated when you're looking at not just one company, but you're looking at 4. And then 4 that have to have a unified view of the data, a unified strategy of where we want to go. And at Jobvite, we decided that we wanted to be a data-first company. And we wanted to really let our data that didn't exist before, but this data as a combination of these 4 companies tell a story in ways that we haven't been able to tell the beginning to end solution for candidates from interest as a prospect all the way through being hired and onboarded. So what we decided to do was evaluate our current environment and determine what was our plan and strategy for how we were going to accomplish these goals. So if you look at our current state or initial state here, just like any company, there's lots of databases. There's different ETL packages and solutions, refresh rates all over the board. There are multiple data warehouses and then lots of different BI tools. And so we had to determine what is that end state that we want to be at and what do we want to do. And so our goal was to build out a full suite of reporting solution to where we can enable all of our customers access to the data in one location, independent of what platform they're using. So even though we've rolled up these 4 companies into one suite of products, there's still different UIs, right? This roll-up strategy happened last February. And so we're still working on how do the UIs consolidate? How do we get the features to go across platform? But what we can do with the data is tell a cohesive story. But how do we implement that, right? How do we rip out the reporting and analytics from each of these different tools and place them in a way that's easily accessible and findable from all the users to get all that fantastic data that we didn't have before? So our strategy here was to build a strategic advantage by creatively and effectively collecting, storing, analyzing, sharing, and presenting data. So there are a couple things that we wanted to think about. We wanted to go fast, right? To tell this story, it's going to be really complicated. It's going to be challenging to get the data all in one location. That's a huge issue on its own. Once the data is there, it's really tough to put a reporting layer on top of it. Which one do we pick? If you think about all the different tools that we had, we were using Tableau and Mixpanel and other offerings, and it's really tough to figure out which strategy do we want to go. So we could roll our own. That was a consideration. But as Daniel mentioned earlier, there's a lot of consideration there that you don't think about, right? There's the tip of the iceberg, and you might think that it's a easier, faster, better solution. But when you really think about where we are with everything that was under that iceberg, there's tons to consider. And for us, we decided that it was going to be much better for us to go farm that work out, rely on industry experts and professionals like the Looker team, and allow them to manage that for us. And we moved to an embedded solution. So embedded's fantastic for us because it allows us to take advantage of all the development and effort that Looker has put in, and we can quickly deploy and get this data in the hands of customers in a very fast way. So if we want to think about the design that we are looking at, where our end state ended up being, we still didn't touch the databases. The transactional databases are what they are. They still are, and they still will be. That's not the important part. We pull from the transactional data, we move the data, we consolidated refresh times, and then we selected Snowflake as our data warehouse layer. So with Snowflake, that's where we unified all of our data. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that we aggregated and created a new layer of data with consolidated data. It was more of a unification strategy, at least for our initial phases. This puts all the data in one location, which allows us to easily layer Looker in on top of the solution. This, again, provides speed of development, easy access, a consistent source of truth through LookML and being able to standardize across all of the different data platforms that we have pointing here. And it allows us to quickly build out an application that is scalable and serviceable for all of our future needs. And so a real quick example here on what we've been able to do. So again, consolidation of 4 companies. We still have 4 different UIs. So we needed one unified location outside of those 4 UIs to where one of our customers could view their data across the platforms without having to navigate back and forth between each of those different platforms. So we have built a standalone UI that's accessible through all the platforms, and that's where all of our Looker analytics dashboards and looks are provided, and it's easy access for anyone to get to that data. Once they navigate there, They have a full listing of all of their reports and their standard reports, as well as anything that they might have built on a custom basis. So the advantage here for us was getting people quick access to that data without having to spend a lot of time digging through certain areas of one application, having to flip over to a different one, and really trying to understand where is the right location. So we've consolidated it all into that one UI that allows quick and easy access. Now the plan is, I'm going to go back a slide. The plan is for us to be able to take this data and then amend it with a lot of additional data. So how do we insert other sources? And this is going to go into our database or data warehouse layer, and then adding all these other sources will allow us to have great outputs like data exchanges, partner integrations, machine learning models, our BI tools, including Looker, and other internal applications. And so what do we get out of this solution with Looker? Well, we get scalability. We get faster deployment of reports. And an interesting story I've got here is we just 3 weeks ago launched a diversity and inclusion project that is very top of mind in our industry, as well as many other industries. And so this was a new solution that we rolled out just 3 weeks ago. And like many cases, reporting lags behind. But in this case, we were able to work with the team as it was deployed, and we had new data rolling into our system and new reports that we're able to pull out and immediately have dropped in. So again, 3 weeks ago, and we've already got new reports live to all of our customers that they can now access all of this data. Another incredibly important part here is custom reports. So a lot of our applications didn't have the ability to build custom reports before. And so this is something that's net new functionality and completely leveraging the entire Looker backend. So just by the construct of our data models inside of LookML, it gives them the ability to really dig deep into their data and find the information that they're looking for without us having to have a lot of pre-built standard reports. Speed of development, I've talked about this many times, but the real value to us is we don't want to be the bottleneck. We don't want to be the part of the chain that is taking the longest. So if you think about traditionally, how do you go get a new report? There's some request that comes in, and then it goes to a queue where someone validates the request, and then it goes to a development queue where someone has to look at and ensure that this is something that we can go build. Once we build it, it's going to take 2 to 4 weeks to build and then test. And then next thing you know, it's 3-4 months later that the report that you need is finally out there, and it might not even be something that you need anymore. So something that we've really focused on is pushing this to the edge, right? Through the Looker platform, we've been able to construct the data model and the LookML in a way that really empowers not just our data teams, but everyone that touches the customer, helping them when a request comes in to maybe even address it while they're on a call or a screen share with that customer. So we're trying to remove that entirely way too long development cycle to enable them to get the data that they need in a very short period of time. In-app user management, this is fantastic. Looker uses all of our permission models that already exist. So again, think about 4 companies. You've got 4 different permissions models. You've got 4 different authentication capabilities. There's lots of things to consider here. And if we were to have had to recreate our own permissioning structure, it would have been very complex and complicated. Instead, we were able to leverage a lot of what Looker has to manage our users. Scalable. This is key for us. So we've rolled this out to a couple thousand customers right now, and Looker's been there with us every step of the way. They manage all the infrastructure and even helping size and provide the right amount of resources to make sure that we're getting the speed and performance that we need, even as we add additional customers who are adding lots of additional weight to the system. And we've also got the library of charts and graphs. And so we've pre-built a lot of data in our system and in the form of looks and dashboards. And that gives our customers the ability to quickly see some examples of what they could look at in the form of standard reports, but they can easily dig into those data elements through the form of drill downs, drill through, drill across, and then also do some additional exploring from those data points. So it really is a cohesive story just by clicking in these dashboards, finding the data that you want in a very easy to use way. And if you want to have a small tweak, filter change, parameter change, something like that, that's all built in that LookML. So it allows us to maintain integrity at the central data store, and then gives our customers the ability to really slice and dice in any way that they want to. So what do we get out of this? This is our analytics solution. This is a live Looker, live-ish, I guess, since it's in slide form. Our dashboard that we've got, and this is in that UI that I was talking about that sits outside of all the applications, but very easy to navigate to and provide all of the data in the form of interesting visualizations, reports, tools. And it's kind of the gift that keeps on giving, because when I was building this this particular dashboard, there, in addition to the deep linking that just follows through, it wasn't an intention of mine to add some of those elements to it, but since it was already built in core to the LookML process, all of those things follow along. And so every time you make some improvements and amendments to the data, when you add it into these dashboards, it allows you to get a lot of value without having to recreate it from scratch every single time. And with that, Daniel, I'll hand it back over to you.
Awesome. So that is such good info. Before we go to audience questions, and I'll just remind folks, if you have any questions for Zach or for me, but probably for Zach because he's more interesting, please just go ahead and enter them in the Q&A box, and we'll see them and get to them. But before I hand the virtual mic over to the audience, I just want to ask, so one thing that I find really interesting about Jobvite's story is specifically around the sort of integration of 4 different companies, right? I feel like I very often see the opposite of the slide you showed, right? Where you have sort of one front end and then just chaos behind the scenes, right? You have like everything sort of splinters into all of these different silos, and all of a sudden for data access, people are in so many different places. And I'm curious, like, how did you manage to do the opposite, which is far more impressive, which is like you start with chaos, right? You start with 4 different UIs, 4 different tools, and you somehow got them feeding into a single interface, a single reporting interface. So, how much work was that? How much planning went into that as you were doing the acquisitions? Like, I'm just curious to hear more about how that worked.
Yeah, sure thing. So just to put it all in context here, we started with Looker October 1st of 2019. The slide I showed you.
Since it's still March, really is not that long ago, right? It's March 197th now, right? Something like that.
Exactly. Well, in fact, we went early release with our customers April 1st. So we went from nothing to just signing up with Looker to having customers on the platform 6 months later. And so now there's a lot of back-end data consolidation that has to happen in parallel, but a lot of the value comes from just the breadth and capability of the LookML structure, right? So once you get the data organized where you need it, there's a ton of power and repeatability that you can implement.
For folks who aren't familiar with LookML, can you explain a little bit about like what that allowed, particularly as you're integrating data coming from so many different places and so many different systems, how did that allow you to do consolidation in a way that just sort of doing physical ETL, extract, transform, and load, sort of more traditional heavyweight transformation? How did LookML allow you to do that more effectively or more efficiently?
Yeah, so we've kind of gone more to the ELT version versus the ETL, but we're moving massive amounts of data from 4 different platforms, right? So all the backends are still the same. None of that's changing. But LookML gives us a way to model that data in a way without having to recreate it every single time, right? So we've got this central authority that is our single source of truth, right? So if you think about it, like counting sounds easy, but it's really hard. Even when you count something as simple as visitors or candidates, right? And it sounds really simple, but it's not. And so when you figure out how you want to count somebody and you can implement that in the LookML, and if I'm looking at my candidate count, for instance, I know that my candidate count is the same every single time. And when I drag in the candidate field and I'm counting, I know and can reliably know whether it's me that's pulling it or one of our support folks or someone in services or even our customers. It's going to be the same. And there's a ton of value there. Because otherwise, when you build a new report, you've got to run a new query. You've got to create that process again. And it's very possible that you drop something out. You forgot a parameter. There's something slightly different in your join or where clause. And that is all managed centrally by our data team in the LookML. And that just creates a lot of consistency and allows us to focus on other efforts instead of how did I build this the last time, because I need to go back and make sure I build it the exact same way the next time.
Yeah, there's no faster way to lose business people's trust than to give them different numbers for the same question on, different days or depending on who they happen to ping, or, oh, well, if you use this system, you're going to get 73, but if you use this system, you're going to get 75. That just naturally raises the question, not just like what is why 73 and 75, but like, well, why should I trust either of those? Why not 70? Why not 10? Like, do you really know what you're doing?
Exactly. Yeah. And the other nice part about the LookML is the ability to code in the drill downs and the deep linking and things like that. So once you drop it in a single time, it's always there. And that was kind of my comment on the gift that keeps on giving. Those data elements have a lot of individual power to them that you might not even realize it, especially as a user. So you drop something in and you can click on it all of a sudden, and you get more information as you click on it. And it really helps you do a deep analysis without even realizing you're doing it. You're just clicking around trying to understand, and you're getting that real-time feedback, which is really fantastic.
Yeah, and because I feel like we're talking a lot about LookML without actually saying explicitly what it is, maybe I'll just say. So for anybody who writes SQL for a living or does analysis really of any kind for a living, LookML is kind of the heart of Looker. And what it is it's a modeling language that lets you take all of that SQL that for most people lives in like, final.sql, final.sql, really final.sql on their desktop, and breaks it down into little bite-sized chunks and then makes it organized, makes it version controlled, makes it collaborative, makes it easy to read, which anybody who's ever tried to read a 200-line SQL statement, even one that they wrote a couple of weeks ago, knows is really hard with SQL. It puts that in one place. And so, I remember from my beginnings writing SQL a lot of years ago where, a lot of reports were just manual SQL writing. And I was pulling a report on, for this campaign, how much did we sell? And I forgot where order status equals payment completed in the where. And so the numbers I got back were amazing. They were just off the charts. I was like, oh my God, guys, we're bringing in so much money. And I, made the mistake of not sanity checking that, brought it to my boss. And he was like, does this include failed orders? And I was like, I will be right back. And sure enough, I looked at the query, had forgotten that, where order status is complete, which you needed in every single query, reran it, and it was much less of a good day than I had thought it was. LookML is the kind of thing, is a tool that kind of makes that so that you never have to think about it, right? You're just like, yeah, no, we should, like 99% of the time, someone is going to want to filter on orders that are completed, not that are failed. So let's just enforce that always everywhere. And if someone really wants to remove it and look at failed orders, they can do that. But like, let's just make that the default. And so those kinds of pure logic, guardrails are the kinds of things that prevent dummies like me from telling their boss totally inaccurate numbers. So maybe I'll ask one more question and then I'll pass it off to the audience. I continue to be impressed by the speed with which you rolled this out, and in a very unusual time for the world, and I assume one that was unusual for your platform, since the job market is in more turmoil, I think, than it's been certainly since 2008 and probably ever, maybe since the Great Depression. I'm curious, like, were there, you talked about, Looker or LookML as the gift that keeps on giving. How has that, having that in place, or barely having that in place when all of this started, how has that made it easier or harder, or, how has it changed your adaptation to this new world?
Yeah, so, we're in the hiring space, and so being able to really understand how are our customers being impacted by this, helping them understand what they need to know about their hiring strategies, what's working, what's not. Are they hiring more or less, and what areas? How do they go find people really quickly? So a lot of people were unemployed for some period of time, and then they need to rehire everyone. So the ability to have visibility to that, right, and to help them run their business, right? We don't want them to not be able to do something because the data is not there, and for us to be able to not really have to worry about that. This is something that you can count on. It's something that's available and allows them to conduct the analysis that they need to make the decisions that they need to make, right? So this is something that it's really the foundation of the business. It's maybe not something that gets highlighted as much because we're selling other features and benefits, but the other features and benefits don't make nearly as much sense from a value perspective if you don't have that data that can provide you the answers that you need.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, I'm going to pass the virtual mic to the audience. So we've got a good question from Eugene. He said, given a standalone UI that you developed for Looker reports, how do you connect back to apps to implement actions that are driven or suggested by the report? So, data comes in, says, oh, this channel is, not delivering, this other channel is really over delivering. We need to make some tweaks based on that. How do you sort of connect that insight to action?
Yeah, so right now we've got a lot of deep links in the system. So the dashboard that I shared before, let's see if I can pull this thing back up. This particular dashboard, there's a lot of deep links in here. So by clicking on these open requisitions or the 5 for awaiting approval, I can click on that and it takes me directly into the application, directly to that page, and then I can click my approve buttons there. I can go immediately to the particular part of the application. So this could be redirecting me to any of the 4 different applications. And so it's a nice way to surface that in a way that that you don't have to spend a lot of time doing, right? It's just basically a redirect.
Got it. Yeah, and that's possible. I mean, you talked a little bit about linking and deep linking, but in this screenshot here, can you? It's a little bit hard to describe, so good luck with this. But what of this is Jobvite? What of this is Looker? What of this, just so people understand sort of where one starts and one stops.
Sure. So everything on the left, so the black bar, and then the where you've got your favorite icons next to that. Yeah, daily actions, application disposition, all the. Yep. Yeah, that's the navigation frame, and then everything inside of where the data resides, that's the embedded piece. And so we again here, we try to minimize this as much as possible. We did not want to be in the UI business, right? I mean, we kind of are already in the UI business, but our data team didn't want to be in the UI business. And so how do we outsource that as much as possible? And so we tried to go as lightweight and as thin as possible and reuse as much of the native Looker functionality that we can get. So even if you're not an embedded customer, all of the out-of-the-box Looker capabilities, we reuse that as much as possible because we don't want to maintain things that are either duplicative with Looker or that just take a lot of overhead and maintenance. And so where we can, we use what is existing in Looker.
Makes sense. Yeah. Turns out the UI business is really hard. So the less of it that you can do on your own, the better.
It is. And it's also fantastic when we do our own releases, right, of course. And then when Looker comes out with a release that gives us added capabilities. We just add that to our releases as well. So it's fantastic. Dashboard Next is out there, and that's something that we're really excited about. And we've got a roadmap for where we're going to introduce that. But there's a lot of great functionality that our customers, we're not shy telling them about Looker being our solution here, but they don't really care at the end of the day, whether it's Looker or Jobvite that's providing them these things. They know that they're going to get added functionality. It's going to be a better tool. It's going to be easier to use. And that's what's important to us. Whether we do it or Looker does it, doesn't really matter. We just want it to be the best solution that it can.
Absolutely. Yeah. Nobody cares about the behind the scenes except the people on this kind of webinar. But like most customers are like, yeah, whatever. It's better. It's fine. I don't care. So that actually leads very nicely into it. We've got a couple of questions about the classic build versus buy solution question. And, you talked a little bit about this with your, I had my iceberg metaphor, and you talked a little bit about this, about there's more, going on here than just some dashboards. So I'm curious, what was that process like? Did you have a homegrown solution beforehand? Was this sort of new fertile ground that you had not explored yet? And how did you get to that decision about whether to buy or to build in-house?
Yeah, for sure. So we did. Jobvite had a semi-homegrown solution, and our major reason for going away from that is we wanted our data to be a platform, right? If we think about our organization, we want our data team to be focused on providing the data and not necessarily spending a lot of time, dollars, and resources around building the structures to present that data. And if you think about it, if you roll your own and there's a filter change, right, you've got to go in and make some UI element differences to account for those new filters. If sizing doesn't work for something, right, because you've got an extra long title on your chart or legend or something like that, those are all things you got to go take care of, right? And that's not stuff that I want to spend time doing, honestly. And so we want to go get the right answers. We don't want to worry about sizing and color schemes and things like that. So we didn't spend a lot of time, honestly, going build versus buy. It was we needed to consolidate the data across all of our companies and get that data accessible and usable by our customers. And really the only way that we were going to accomplish that was to go with a solution like Looker and greatly expedite the time that it would take to implement this. And again, we started October 1st, and April 1st, we had customers up and running in the platform.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the consolidation of the 4 different companies may have been a big driver there, right? It gave your data team more than enough to keep them busy. They did not need to be worrying about also building a solution.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And, integrations are hard anyway, right? There's team consolidation, there's reorgs, there's all kinds of things that they have to consider, right? And so how do we chart a path that we can do what we need to do amongst all the chaos that a normal acquisition and integration strategy has, and really focus on delivering something that has a lot of value. And that's what we did. And also, we didn't have to pick one of the existing tools as the winner, right? We wanted to go out and start from scratch, and we think we got a best of breed in our Snowflake plus Looker combo. And so that's something that we continue to be super thrilled about that.
Cool. So we've got another question, which maybe is directed at me. I'm not sure. But, asking, is Looker actually that different than other BI tools? Mentions Tableau. I can give my perspective, which is basically, and then I'll let you jump in, Zach. But, I think as somebody who's used both, I love Tableau desktop. I think it's great for what it does. I think if you're an analyst working on a reasonable size set of data, not huge data, but, small to medium data. And what you want to do is slice and dice that data a million different ways, figure out what comes out of it, make some really gorgeous visualizations. Like, I think Tableau is probably the right tool for that. But that's not what Jobvite was faced with. And it's certainly not what, most of our customers, I think, who are most successful with Looker are faced with. I think what we see is that the place that Looker really excels is in giving everybody across an organization the ability to ask questions of data and get answers back without having to know, every little the current definition of lifetime customer value is X, right? Most people in the organization don't want to have to think about that. And so the idea of downloading a Tableau workbook, pulling in some raw data and having to impose that meaning on it, I think is really intimidating for a lot of people and makes it really hard. So I think where Looker really excels is in being able to give that shared understanding of the data to everybody in the organization and creating that single source of truth. So if you're, standalone analyst, pretty visualizations, slice and dice, great. Tableau Desktop is awesome. If your goal, though, is to give sort of broad understanding of the data across the organization, I think that's where Looker really excels. So, Zach, do you have anything that you want to throw in there?
Yeah, I completely agree, and I am a Tableau user as well, right? I think there's definitely the time and application for Tableau. It's a great tool in certain aspects, and we actually looked at Tableau as we did a bake-off amongst a variety of tools. We also looked at Power BI, and it was just hands down Looker, honestly, for what we needed with the embedded solution. That's where Looker has put a lot of emphasis and investment, and it's not necessarily there with the other tools. And so that's where we decided to go to get the support that we needed.
Cool. Couldn't have said it better myself. So we've got time for one or two more. So a question from Janine: can you do filtering and sorting and get to an advanced level of what if analysis on the fly? And does your solution or either Looker or Jobvite's implementation of Looker provide predictive analytics?
Yeah, so filtering and sorting is definitely something that's pretty standard and out of the box. And this can be built in pre-built reports, as well as allowing the users to build their own filtering. The predictive analytics, this is where you've got to make sure that you've got your back-end data structured the way that you want it to be, right? So you can be predictive in that sense, but absolutely a possibility. And then you can surface that in some of our reports. And so in the particular dashboard screenshot that I shared earlier, there was a bit of a predictive component in there. So we were looking at time to hire, which is a pretty important stat in the field. And based upon historically how long it's taking to hire somebody based upon job category, we were showing how many days and how many candidates we think you would need to have in the system. And so that way, Looker's just surfacing all these things. It's more work on the backside to make sure that you've got your analytics where you want them. But Looker does a fantastic job of surfacing that and displaying it.
Cool. Yeah. And I just cannot harp enough on the first thing you said, which is just, you got to have your house in order before you start doing predictive, because if garbage in, garbage out, right? And the more that you leverage really, powerful predictive algorithms, the more possibility that if you put garbage in, it may give you crazy answers that you or your, end user don't realize are crazy. And there's nothing worse than making bad decisions based on predictions, based on bad data.
Yep, absolutely.
So, all right. So we've got time for one last one from Helen. So since Looker is an intermediate layer between reporting and data warehouse, how do we deal with a bottleneck on the data warehouse when we have high user traffic? And she notes, I think, that she's on Redshift. Yeah. How do you deal with that? You talked a little bit about scaling, but.
Yeah. So I guess one thing is you've got to make sure you've got your throughput from your data warehouse, right? So you've got to have an optimized system that can run optimized queries for sure. And Looker is it's not necessarily a layer between our reporting and our data warehouse. It actually is our reporting layer on top of our data warehouse. And so there's definitely the LookML code, which we've talked about in depth here, that is more of the intermediate layer. But one of the nice parts about Looker is that being a SaaS offering is that there's no infrastructure that we're managing, right? It all falls on the Looker team. And honestly, as we've added new customers, we've been on the phone with Looker and working with their support team to make sure that we're sized appropriately, because and not because we were having concerns or issues. It's rather just that it's an ongoing conversation to make sure that we know what to expect and that the Looker team knows what to expect as we're ramping this up, right? We've still got more customers that we're going to onboard around 10/1. And so making sure that we're in preparation for bringing those new customers on, that we've got the right sizing that we need to have to manage all those new load of customers.
Yep, absolutely. And I think to Helen's question, and to what you said, I think, the reality is, because Looker is very intentionally BYODB, bring your own database, you need to make sure that the tool that you're using at the sort of foundational level, the data warehouse or the database, is capable of serving what you need for your users. And, Looker gives you a lot of tools to optimize performance and make sure that you're getting as much as you can out of whatever database you're using. But, the reality is some databases are going to be able to support higher concurrency than others. I used Amazon Redshift for a long time, liked a lot of things about it, but definitely ran into some concurrency and scaling issues there. Zach mentioned that they're using Snowflake, which is something we see a lot of with our embedded customers because it is so good at high concurrency workloads. BigQuery from Google, GCP is another one that's very scalable and does nicely with high concurrency workloads. So, there are real advantages to being able to build the best in breed stack that meets your particular needs, but it also means you need to be cognizant of the limitations of any of the tools that you're using. So with that, I will bring up our thank you slide. And first off, thanks, Zach. This was a fascinating conversation.
Yeah,
I learned a lot. Our audience did as well. If you have other questions or want to get a demo of Looker, you can check out any of these resources. I imagine that you could find out more about Jobvite at jobvite.com, I'm going to guess.
You got it.
Yeah.
Yep, you got it.
Not jobvite.org or jobvite.net or any of those things.
Oldfashioned.com.
Cool. So check out jobvite.com. Check out any of these resources. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And we, as I said at the beginning, we've recorded this. And so if you missed any part, missed the beginning, don't worry. You will get a recording of the full thing in your inbox. Have a great day, everybody, and take care. Take care, Zach.
Thank you.